Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for coming today and helping enlighten us. I represent Connecticut, and I have constituents who ride these rails every day, and I have particular concerns about the Northeast Corridor and what some of these funding proposals would do to people I represent who rely on this to get to and from work. So, Mr. Nessenbaum, the Northeast Corridor Future has proposed an alternative route, a coastal route, and it seems to be preferring that. There has been a great deal of public opposition, as I'm sure you're aware, and I am wondering if, and environmental concerns about the number of waterways that would have to be crossed and what that might do. I'm wondering if there's been any reconsideration of that route, given the strong amount of public opposition.
So, yes, we've spent quite a bit of time in Connecticut and heard from lots of your constituents, and that's been very valuable in the process. And it is part of the environmental process to do that, to have the public hearings, to have public meetings, to get input. And so we are in the process of considering all of those comments and putting together our record of decision on Northeast Corridor Future, and would expect that out soon.
And you expect that soon, because I'm
Yes.
getting that question asked of one, and I want to be very clear on record. I think it's really important to leave the door open for Connecticut to be part at the table to consider an inland route, which would not have, I think, the same level of opposition and could get us to much higher rates of speed than is ever going to be possible, given the geographical location, geology, and just frankly, there's not enough footprint along the coast to ever make use of the speeds that new rail are able to get to. We can't do it on the coast, and people want actual high speed. I'd like to explore a little bit on that same vein about the opportunity to do P3s. There's a lot of discussion about public-private partnerships with this administration and in this committee, and like feedback from all of you on the opportunity, particularly in the Northeast Corridor, where we know there's high demand for, again, something like an inland route, a different route than what we're currently using, that would be able to reach the kind of high speed that we see, say, in Japan, in China, in Europe, in other developed countries around the world.
Sure, I'd be happy to start, and I'm sure other panelists would have something to say about that. The Northeast Corridor Future is really a vision for the Northeast Corridor over the next 35 years, and it is kind of a prerequisite to get whatever kinds of investment into the corridor that we need. So it lays out the vision, and then it's agnostic as to what the funding source ends up being, but our expectation is that it will be multiple funding sources from a variety of entities, including the private sector, to actually deliver the program.
If I could, are there examples of where private financing has helped alleviate funding for Amtrak? Can you give us any examples where that's actually happened as opposed to being talked about?
So what I can tell you is there are a number of examples around the country. In fact, you have one sitting here on the panel of where private sector has already put resources on the table, and we're actively working with those partners around the country. And there are certainly examples internationally as well where private sector has made important contributions to project development.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record a letter I received from one of my constituents who is very concerned about proposals to cut intercity rail, and made clear that although he does not share my political persuasion, he shares my passion for intercity rail, rides the rails all the time, and is deeply concerned about these funding cuts that are being proposed. And I'd like to follow up with those because, again, we know the only part of the system that's making money is the Northeast Corridor. However, if we cut off the intercity rail, what feeds into that, what impact do we think that's going to have, including on the Northeast Corridor for pieces that independently perhaps aren't making money but funnel into the Northeast Corridor and then are needed to help maintain that system and keep it operating?
So